All right. Welcome back to the Wealth Stackers call. Today I'm trying something new, a new software where we got people from the community on Zoom and we got YouTube, Twitter, and LinkedIn going at the same time. Testing this out, seeing how this works. But okay, I see YouTube is on. Cannot post comments to LinkedIn. Okay. So, if you're on LinkedIn and you have a comment, jump to the YouTube. Sorry. Um, so I'm gonna start out again. Thank you for whenever you're watching, wherever you're watching. Today, I'm gonna be discussing a question I get asked. How much Bitcoin should I own as a business or as an individual? I do like talking to people and having them think of themselves as a business, make their investing thought of as a business. So today I'm just gonna go through what I speak to when I speak to business owners or high net worth individuals or anyone investing into Bitcoin and Ethereum. Especially now, we're seeing a lot of laws change and things are going to start heating up, and you're going to see more and more of this. So I want to get out in front of it and just start having the conversation. And if you have any comments, again, make them, and I'll stop and go from there. So I'm gonna start out by. Okay, wait. Let me. I'm trying a bunch of things at the same time. All right. So here's where we start. Okay. So how much of your business cash should you keep in Bitcoin? Also, as an individual, right? So, a lot of people I've seen this. We're going almost on 3 years, almost into the fourth year of Stack's existence, which is pretty crazy how fast time flies. Um, so what I've seen is people bring in money that they need, right? Like thinking that Bitcoin's gonna go up, so I need this money right now. But when it goes up, I'll have more, and then I can use that money whenever I need it. But unfortunately, most of us are not expert traders, and we can't time the market well. Most people, what we see from the app is most people end up bringing in money at the same time, which is at the local tops. And now it's just so clear in the data when we get to see we can probably time the tops now because every time there's a top, we see an influx of deposits. So first off, it starts out by thinking how much do I actually need, to spend? And you can't put that into investments because investments can go up or down. So you have to start thinking about it in a different way, and I'll start explaining that. All right, sorry. Okay, yeah. So if you are wanting to understand this in a more deeper way, there's a free blueprint in the link below. And if you want, you can jump on a call with us and we can talk out your situation. We work out what your plan is, what your goal is, and we can go from there. So the big question, how much is too little? Like, because a lot of people will be like, I just don't want to miss out on this upside, right? Like, I think Bitcoin is going to 500K or $1 million. I don't want to be underexposed. But again, what I tell people is, how soon are you going to need this money? Because how the market does is not a day-to-day thing. It's a year-to-year thing. If you can hold it for a year, maybe two, it's very difficult to lose money. Not to say it's impossible, because if you do buy at the top of the market and the bull run, yes, you might have to wait a few years. But I'll give you an example. I have few friends and customers who bought Bitcoin at 60,000 in 2021, right? And then it went down to 20,000 for a few years, and now they're all better off. But if they would have put money in, needing it, and then in the next 6 months, they would have less than half of what they needed, right? So this is where I kind of preach to people, and I'm trying to make sure anyone at least that watches what I'm creating understands consistency wins in almost everything. So I'm going to give you an example. I just reached 1,000 subscribers on YouTube after 640 plus videos. That's consistency, and it took me 6 years of being consistent and eventually learning over and over, trying different things and, taking classes and watching YouTube videos. Eventually it's starting to click and I'm starting to get more views. And this week I kind of went viral, a little bit viral, and I grew my subscriber base 6% in one day, in 48 hours. Again, I'm learning. And as you learn, it compounds. And if you stay consistent, plus the learning, it compounds. It works the same way with investing. You can't decide to put money in one time on a random day and expect to be rich, and you can't go to the gym one time and expect to be, in shape. You have to build a consistent schedule of how you're going to invest. And that's where it starts. So what I see a lot is clients will come and they'll say, I have this money, I want to invest it now because I think it's going to go up. And most of the time I'll tell them on the call, you're more likely all the way at the top right now. So you may want to divide up your deposit. So let's say you're going to bring in, I'm going to put high numbers because this has happened. If you got 10,000 you're about to bring in, I'll tell that person, you're better off putting in 2,000 a month over 5 months. Just off to protect yourself, right? Like you could be in a local top. Most of the time, people who think like that they're seeing FOMO, meaning fear of missing out. They're seeing all the news and saying, before it reaches 150K or 250K, let me bring in money right now. That's not the way to think about it. And then you can also not be exposed at all. That's another big thing. I think it's better to have $100 at a time every 2-3 months instead of nothing. Because at the end of the day, when I built Stack and I launched it, Bitcoin was under 30K. The day I launched it, it was under 30K. Now we're sitting here, it's at 80 something, and it went all the way to 125. So that's a big jump, and that was, like I said, we're going on year 4 now. In February, it will start year 4. So it's about consistency. Imagine we have people who were consistent from those early days and they've done very well, because if you're bringing in money every month or every few months, when it's 20, 30,000 and now it's 126, and you've been riding those waves up and down, you're doing well. So that's the framework. That's the start of the framework. You have to figure out the consistency you can do. And I always tell people, don't overdo it. If you think, all right, I have $10,000 I want to invest, but I may need 5 of it in the next 2-3 months, or 8 of it in the next 2-3 months, then don't put in all 10. Figure out another way. And I can help you think that through on a call, but that's the way I want you to start thinking about it. Oops, wrong way. Okay, so the real risk is not Bitcoin and Ethereum at this point. I don't know if you're studying Bitcoin and you're early to it, you'll learn that nobody who's held Bitcoin for 4 years has lost money. And that's because of inflation. At the end of the day, Bitcoin is a very, very volatile asset. And yes, from one day to the next, it could be down a bunch or up a bunch. But over time, it has tracked way higher than inflation. So if you just have money sitting in a bank account, or like many business owners, business owners have months, if not years, of their overhead sitting in a bank account, right? And if you're doing that and you are not thinking about where could this money go in a better way that I can protect my wealth, you're losing money. And Michael Saylor is a good example that explained, when he did the research for Bitcoin, he had hundreds of millions of dollars in a bank account, and he realized in the next 10 years it's going to be worth a lot less if I don't put it into something else. And the volatility is what makes people scared. But if you know you can hold this money for a long period of time and you're not going to need it, you have to figure out where to put it. Maybe it's not Bitcoin, maybe it's somewhere else, but it has to be somewhere. You have to think of, and inflation is about to get way worse. They're about to print up more money than they've ever printed up in history. What does that do? It wrecks the dollar value, right? So this is coming. No way around it. I think they already started. I think the printing has already started. So doing nothing is also a decision, right? And again, I do try to make this very clear. And this is becoming more and more of a thing for me on calls, is you need consistent income as well if you're going to invest, right? Don't even think about investing until you have consistent income. Because again, if you don't have consistent income and you put money in and then you need it and the prices are down, you actually hurt yourself by investing. And I don't want people to do that. So that's where I'm always trying to make sure people understand that we are in a time where inflation is going to hit. How much can you put aside to benefit yourself long term? And because Stack does borrow to buy more Bitcoin and Ethereum, you will get more. So you don't have to like overdo it with your own personal funds. And this is how people get rich anyway. And that's partly why we built it the way we built it. So the cash framework, right? So the cash stack framework. You got to have money to operate, whether that's your business or your life, right? In a business, we always know our overhead, and in a person, a lot of people don't really track their spending, but as an individual, you want to also be tracking how much you actually need to spend. I just did a great exercise for my business, and I looked at everything I was spending, and I said, what if we are in a bear market? I need to cut expenses. So I looked at every single thing we pay for, and we figured out either how to get a lesser costly version of it, downgrade options that we were paying for that we realized we weren't using. But without doing that exercise, I would have just been paying. This is thousands of extra dollars a month. Without looking into other alternatives, I would have just kept spending that. But because I went through my line items of my business every day, money comes out. And what is that going to? Is that benefiting us in a bear market? If we are in one, does this matter more than investing? No, it doesn't. So we cut off a lot of different things. And I suggest you do the same thing. You want to have an amount you know you're going to need for the next however long you can do, longer the better. Then you want to know, okay, this cash right here, I can hold it for a while. So let's say I'm going to just do simple math, easy math. Let's say your overhead is $10K a month, just to make the math easy, and you got $100K. And you're pretty comfortable with having maybe 8 months of your overhead. So now you have $20,000. So now that $20,000 is your growth capital, right? And you can even make some of that your strategic reserves. And this is where Stack kind of blends both those things, because what you can do is you can put that into an account that buys Bitcoin and Ethereum, leverages to buy more, and whenever you need, you can either borrow or take that money out. But again, you got 8 months in this scenario. You got 8 months of emergency fund. Maybe it's 3 months, maybe it's 6 months, whatever it is. Maybe it's 1 month. Having this strategic reserve that also gives you the growth capital, that's what you want to, that's where you want to be, and that's how you can take advantage of this over time. So bucket one, like I said, operating cash. 3 to 6 month expenses are normal. I've done businesses where we had a year. I've seen businesses that have multiple years. And now with payroll is always the biggest expense. But now with AI, payroll can come down. And I know there's not a popular subject, but as business owners, you got to do what you got to do sometimes. And you got to survive. Businesses have to survive. You can always hire people back. But if the business is dead, you can't hire anyone. Rent is coming down. A lot of people are doing remote. Stack is a fully remote business. I have office space for different businesses, but I don't need it. If I ever needed to get rid of it, it's not going to stop my business. Vendors, I just spoke about this. I went through every single thing we pay for and made sure what we're paying for, we 100% need. But this is not about Bitcoin. This bucket, bucket of cash is not about investing. It's about making sure your income is consistent of your business. Then the growth cash, right? This is normally like things like, you may need to take a course. You may need to do marketing. You may need to spend money on ads. You may need to hire a new person, try something new in the business, innovate. So this is where that cash, you want to have it, but you also don't want it to be just sitting in something that could be losing value. So that's what we've done. Actually, with Stack, we've been able to, again, I want to eat my own dog food. We've been able to stack most of the money we've made, and again, it gets tougher. And if we're heading into a bear market now, I'm starting to figure out how to do that, right? And again, Stack hasn't existed as software during a bear market. We started building it, and it started building up during a bull run. But I ran this as an individual and doing this on lending platforms myself during the bear market. And actually, because I did that, I was able to self-fund Stack. Like we had cash from another business that I was doing this from, right? And that was what bootstrapped Stack. So that's where I personally would not even be in a position to build this software if I didn't use the system that I'm talking to you about. So again, if you want to learn exactly how to do it and jump on a free call, there's a link in the description. Okay, just making sure. All right. And then the strategic reserve. This is where, I know not a lot of businesses even can think like this, but I think you need to always be thinking like this. There's this book called Profit First, and it really talks about how you need to take the income you make as a business and break it down into buckets, jars, however you want to think about it, and really stick to it. Because as a business, you want to pay yourself first, right? As an entrepreneur, you want to make sure you can pay your bills, but you want to make sure that you also can keep this business alive, right? And the way Profit First, does it is it breaks down the core things you need, just like we've been talking about. And then it does have an area for profit. And in this case, you can have an area for strategic reserve where you can have money that's investing. Originally with Stack, we had people deposit money and then borrow to spend. But what I realized was happening was people didn't have enough of the buffer. So think about it like this. If you have, it's a 70% loan to value. So if you have 100K and you need 70, you can do that. But if you needed 90 or 95, you couldn't do that. So we started to create this other option, which was figure out your buffer. If your buffer is 5K, do that. Take the 5K and then invest only the 5K, right? So this is where figuring out how much your strategic reserve is going to be is key. And when you do that, you can be consistent every month with that. You will grow a nest egg that is in Bitcoin and Ethereum. So there's no hard answer. You should be investing 80% of your money into Bitcoin. That's not realistic, right? What I've seen in, again, almost 4 years, is going into the 4th year of running Stack, is business owners and individuals. On the conservative side, they'll take about 10% of their income and invest that. And sometimes that's not even all in Stack, right? Sometimes that is in stocks, real estate, whatever they may want, but they have that in their mind. I make X amount, 10% is going into investments. If you want to be a little more balanced, they do say 30% is, where you want to be, but I know that's very difficult, especially depending where you live. And right now we are in a crazy time with jobs and everything, so I know that's very difficult. And of course, 30 plus is where you can really kill. And that's where the high net worth individuals do very well, because they can bring in large chunks of the money. And that's where, unfortunately, the rich are going to get richer because they can do stuff like that. So if you can only deposit 10% of what you make and you make less, and a rich individual or a business owner is able to do 30% of more money, it's just the way it is. It's pretty sad, but I do tell people, no matter where you are, the person who's wealthy, a lot of times they were where you were too. They just figured it out and got to the level that they got to. So you can as well. And you just start out with whatever you can start out with. I have people depositing $50 a month into Stack, but growing thousands of dollars that before they probably would have just wasted, right? And over time, if they just are consistent with that, they'll look up and see a good portfolio that they more than likely would not never have had, right? Because if you're depositing $50 and you're borrowing 100 to invest more, and you do that consistently, that growth, and then as the growth happens, we borrow more automatically, and then when the profits come, we take those profits and we buy back in. That just keeps growing and growing and growing, and the longer you can do it, the better. So how can you adjust this idea, right? Like the overall, and like I spoke about this very early. First of all, you want to have stability in cash flow. You want to know that you're not putting in money that you're going to need in a month or 2 or 3 or 5, right? Again, depending on how your income is, you can decide that. Then time horizon. This is another thing I've seen a lot of people do wrong. I ask it on the calls. How long do you believe before you're going to need this money? And most people are like, yeah, I don't need it. I'm just going to leave it in there. We're going to see where it goes. I'm in this for the long haul. You hear that a lot. And then in a few months, they're like, oh, I kind of need this money. And more than not, most of these people have put in at the heights of the market because they're not doing it consistently. They end up putting at the top, and the market falls, and they need money. And again, I the only way I've seen this not be a problem is people who are just having a day and an amount, and it just automatically happens. Every Monday on the first of the month, X amount falls into their stack. Stack does its thing. They don't even have to open the app. We just dollar cost average. We do what we do automatically, and they do amazing. But the people that think they can time the market, we've had hundreds of customers at this point, and I've only had, I think, 2 people that have timed the market out of hundreds. And again, I don't think that's not normal. I think most traders lose money. If you think you can time the market, you're gambling, and most gamblers lose. So I never wanted Stack to be a gambling app, but it's hard to change human behavior. And human behavior is not wanting to gamble. It's that gambling triggers something in your brain that feels good. So, and of course, healthy things don't feel as good, right? Like when you have to work out, that doesn't feel as good. When you got to eat vegetables, that doesn't feel as good. When you have to be consistent about investing for a long period of time, it doesn't feel as good as gambling. But just like all those other things, it's not good for you. And you have to figure out a way to train yourself not to do it. And what I thought about when I built this was, I want a way for me to get out of my own way, right? I want to be able to just say, do this for me. I'm not even going to deal with it. I don't want to know when I have to sell. I don't want to have to protect, because I was doing it for a long time. And it got to the point where even it was tough for me to keep track of and keep doing, and it just got tiring, over years. So having Stack do it for you, and again, I'm probably going to have to do this for the rest of my life, right? You're going to have to invest. You can't beat inflation by working, right? So you have to take your money and put it somewhere. So you can decide what asset class that is: Bitcoin, Ethereum, real estate, stocks, bonds, precious metals. All these are options. But when I did the research, I personally thought Bitcoin and Ethereum made the most sense for me. And because we can program all this, even more. So why do businesses and individuals fail when it comes to Bitcoin and Ethereum? The all-in thinking, I just told you about that. Like, if you only have 10K to invest, or 1K, or 500, or 50,000, you can't just think, let me put it in right now and gamble it, right? It could work out every now and then, but most of the time I've seen it not work out, because it's, again, the gambling mechanism has been triggered, and the FOMO makes you think, I got to put all this money in right now because tomorrow it's going to go up a lot. That doesn't work out, at least in my experience. Like I said, only less than a handful of people that have done this I've seen that work out for. And I've spoken to a lot more people who don't use Stack and are traders, and they lose more than they win. That's gambling, right? And same, I understand, it's the same with most things. You lose more than you win. In business, as a business owner, we know this. We lose more than we win. But if you can be consistent in a long period of time, there's really no losing in that, because you are just consistently investing for a long period of time, you look up, there's going to be a lot more money there because you're putting it aside in an asset that grows fast, especially with money being protected when the prices go up and they come back down. We take those profits. If the prices fall, we sell to protect because we don't want to have to sell at the bottom. Like, so imagine the scenario I told you in the beginning. You bought Bitcoin at 60,000 and you were, lucky enough to be able to buy a full Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin is at 20,000 and you need money. You're going to have to sell that Bitcoin for the 20,000 and lose the 40,000. So what Stack does is if the prices are falling, we start selling. And we'd rather be in cash when Bitcoin is at 40K, all in cash with no Bitcoin, than be all the way at 20K still holding Bitcoin. Because at least then you got 20 more thousand to buy more Bitcoin, right? And Ethereum. So this is where stopping the bleeding is essential to have more cash on hand when you need it. So how do smart business owners and individuals take advantage of doing this? And I didn't create this out of my mind by itself. There's many people in history that have done this, right? Like you can look up leverage traders that have actually done well, and they all have guardrails. They have guardrails of limitations. They have gradual deposits. They don't just put it all in one shot, and they don't panic sell. Because if you're panic selling, that means you waited too long to protect those gains. And if you brought in money and you brought in too much at the same time and prices start to fall, you have to panic sell. So the people who do it right, they bring in money consistently. They have limits of when they trigger selling, right? And if you don't have that, you are gambling. Because you're going to most likely end up panic selling. It's just the numbers. This is what happens to most people. And again, if you want to learn more, we got a free blueprint. And of course, you could always jump on a call with one of us and we can walk you through. You can try Stack with any amount of money, $50, $5 million. This is all decentralized, self-custody, crypto, smart contracts. So, and all public data and all that stuff. So you can check us out any way you want, and you can join our free community as well. The link should be in the description. Look forward to hearing from you, and check out this next video because this might be the way to help you get more Bitcoin. Thank you.